Hello everyone. As we are dealing with rabies, let's continue. We had finished with introductory part, problem statement. We had finished with pathogenesis, clinical aspect related with rabies. So today we are going to finish the another part related with rabies, which is the most important part and which is frequently asked in your exams. It is prevention of human rabies. How we are going to prevent rabies. Before proceeding to prevention of rabies, let's have a recap of previous two sessions. What you can see in this image? Can you see different animals which are involved in transmission of rabies? But the most important animal which plays major role in transmission of rabies is rabid dog. Here we are talking about transmission of rabies from animals to humans. So now it is clear to all of you that rabies is mainly transmitted by bites of rabid dogs. Now, what you can see in this image, after the bite of the dog, how the virus travels. So here you can see yellow color structure, central nervous system, and green color structure, peripheral nervous system. So as you know, the virus after the bite is introduced at the site of bite, and from there it ascends through peripheral nerves to the central nervous system. This is centripetal spread, and again the virus travels to peripheral parts. This is centrifugal spread. In this slide you can see centripetal spread as well as centrifugal spread. In this slide you can see the spectrum of the rabies. This spectrum already we have studied in yesterday's session. So right now please pay attention to the point of the arrow. What you can see before the point of the arrow is the word death. So as we know, rabies is almost always fatal infection. So in this disease, it's very difficult to save the life of the patient. So where we should have to focus? Our focus must be on its prevention. Can we prevent the rabies? Yes, what is your answer to this question? Is rabies preventable disease? Yes, we can definitely prevent rabies. So in this session, we are going to discuss prevention of human rabies. So if you can recall, we said rabies is almost fatal disease, but at the same time it is preventable disease. So how we can prevent human rabies? There are three important criteria which are used for prevention. It includes post-exposure prophylaxis, pre-exposure prophylaxis, and another criteria is post-exposure treatment of those persons who have vaccinated with rabies vaccine previously. So, I repeat, post-exposure prophylaxis, pre-exposure prophylaxis, and post-exposure treatment of persons who have been vaccinated previously. In this image, please pay attention to the orange colored arrows. As far as first arrow is concerned, it is very important for you to know the post
exposure prophylaxis is the most important intervention in prevention of rabies, but it is important only before the appearance of symptoms of rabies. And it is very important to initiate post exposure prophylaxis as early as possible. Why this is so? Because once the symptoms of rabies starts developing, it's very difficult to stop the progress of the disease. So now, as you know, post-exposure prophylaxis is the most important intervention in prevention of rabies. It is very essential for you to understand post-exposure prophylaxis in detail.
So now let us try to understand post-exposure prophylaxis. As per guidelines given in KPAC, we are going to consider this under three headings: general consideration, local treatment of the wound, and immunization. General consideration. Now, what is the aim of post-exposure prophylaxis? Aim of post-exposure prophylaxis is to neutralize the inoculated virus before it invades nervous system. So I hope you can recall the pathogenesis where we said when a rabid animal bites, rabies virus is introduced. At the site of introduction, it multiplies. Then along with peripheral nerves, it ascends to the central nervous system. It replicates in CNS. It causes inflammation and infection at central nervous system, and then again virus spreads centrifugally. So whenever we are considering post-exposure prophylaxis, our aim is to neutralize the virus which is inoculated during the process of biting, scratching, or even licking. And the virus must be neutralized before it invades peripheral nerve or before it invades central nervous system. Now, what is the best prophylactic treatment for this? Best prophylactic treatment, it includes combined administration of single dose of rabies immunoglobulin with a course of vaccine. So what we are going to do? Simultaneously, we are doing active immunization using the vaccines which are available for prevention of rabies, and at the same time we should have to do passive immunization by using RIG, that is rabies immunoglobulin. So don't forget, this is the most important prophylactic treatment criteria: combined active and passive immunization. Another important part in general consideration is prompt and adequate local treatment. It is very essential. So at the site of bite or scratches or licks, we should have to give local treatment. So what is local treatment? We'll see it. First, try to understand why it is essential to give local treatment. We said it is essential, but try to understand why it is essential. So as our aim is to neutralize the virus before it invades a central nervous system, so purpose of local treatment is to remove virus as much as possible from the site of inoculation before it reaches peripheral nerve endings. So this is the initial period when virus replicates at the site and near the site of bite. So when the virus is at this site, so immediately after inoculation, it is very essential to give local treatment. so that the rabies virus won't invade peripheral nerve endings. And if the virus won't invade peripheral nerve endings, there is less possibility that virus can reach to central nervous system. Now, when to apply or when to give local treatment? Local treatment, it should be given immediately after exposure, and it should be started within minutes. So without any delay, local treatment should be given to the persons who had or who has bitten by rabid dogs or any other rabid animals. Another important thing about local treatment is whenever such events happens in community, people may have different opinions regarding the transfer of the patient. So some people may say without giving local treatment, patient should be taken to the healthcare center. But it is very important to educate the people that local treatment, it is most valuable and it should not be neglected. It is very important to give local treatment to the cases. Now, why we are saying this is very important, one should not neglect it, it is very valuable, because local treatment, it can reduce development of rabies by 80%. So in 80% cases, this successfully helps to prevent invasion of peripheral nerve endings. Now, what is the criteria for local treatment? How we are going to give it? So the first important point is cleansing of the wound. So how we are going to clean it? So cleaning procedure is a local procedure. It should be applied to the site and the area surrounding the site of the bite. Whatever it is, whether it is bite, whether there is scratching or whether there is licking, all these includes local treatment. So for all these cases, local treatment should be given. So here at the site of bite, scratches or licking, as well as the surrounding area, it must be cleaned with plenty of water and soap. So it is very essential to use soap and water. Preferably it should be washed under running tap water. So tap should be on, and under running water this wound should be cleaned by using soap and plenty of water. How long we are supposed to wash this wound? So this cleansing or cleaning procedure, it should be done for at least 15 minutes. So recommended time is 15 minutes. I think it is easy to understand, and this is very basic and important point to understand. So the area of bite and surrounding area, we are going to clean for 15 minutes using plenty of soap and water, preferably under running tap water. Now, it may happen sometimes soap won't be available. So in that case, what should be done? If soap is not available, simple flushing of wound with plenty of water should be done. Still, it is important to clean the wound by using only water, and plenty of water can be used. Now, there is one more possibility. If the bites are severe or if there are puncture wounds, in this case, the such types of wounds should be irrigated using catheters. And what is utility of these procedures? As we said, local cleaning, it prevents development of rabies in nearly about 80% cases. So this minimizes a risk of contracting rabies. It's very clear here that cleaning of wound or washing of wound is very essential.
what is the most important thing in this image that you must note? Please note, after the bite by a rabid animal, most preferably by rabid dog, it is very essential to wash the site of the wound under running tap water for minimum 15 minutes. So note the tap, running water, and the time 15 minutes.
Now this cleaning of wound, it should get followed by appropriate chemical treatment. So what is the chemical treatment and why we are supposed to give chemical treatment? Because as we said, when the procedure of cleaning is going on, at that time virus is removed. And if we follow this cleaning procedure by chemical treatment, whatever residual virus is there, it is removed with the help of chemical treatment. So what we are supposed to use for chemical treatment? For chemical treatment, the agents which kills rabies virus or which are having virucidal action, they are used, and these agents, they inactivate the virus or they kill the virus. So what different options are available for chemical treatment? Here we can use alcohol. Near about 400 to 700 ml per liter strength of alcohol should be present. If alcohol is not available, tincture iodine can be used, or 0.01% aqueous solution of iodine can be used, or the antiseptic which is most commonly available in all OPDs of general practitioners is povidone iodine. So we can use povidone iodine also. So regarding general considerations, we said cleaning of wound, which is very essential part. It minimizes risk of contracting rabies. It by the flushing of the wound, the amount of virus introduced is reduced. Now after cleaning, whatever residual virus is there, further by chemical treatment we can remove this virus, and for chemical treatment we are using virucidal agents like alcohol, tincture iodine, 0.01% solution, this is aqueous solution of iodine, or we can use povidone iodine. Now one more important guideline you are supposed to know: if the bite is very severe and it is very large bite, or it is very big bite which needs suturing, so what you are supposed to do in such cases? The most important recommendation, the most important guideline that you must know is the bite wounds should not be sutured immediately. So immediate suturing of bite wounds in case of bites by rabid animals is not recommended. Why it is not recommended? What is the reason? Because suturing may cause additional trauma, and at the same time the procedure of suturing may favor spread of virus to the deeper tissues. So first important guideline you must know is immediate suturing is not permitted. But if suturing is very essential, then what to do? So in such cases, it can be done after 24 hours or after 48 hours, and minimum stitches should be applied. At the same time, it is very important to use passive immunization. So here local rabies immunoglobulin must be instilled. So what you are supposed to do, where at the site of wound, along with anesthetic agents, rabies immunoglobulin must be instilled at the site of the bite, and then you can proceed for the suturing, but minimum stitches should be applied, and suturing is not done immediately. In cases where it is very essential, it can be done after 24 hours or after 48 hours. Now what we did, cleaning of wound followed by chemical treatment.
Now again look at this image, but now focus your attention on the lower part of the image towards your right side. Can you see syringe of red color? So this is suggestive of use of rabies immunoglobulin at the site of bite. And RIG, that is rabies immunoglobulin, is concerned with passive immunization.
In cases of bites by rabid animals, this treatment should get followed by immunization against tetanus. So anti-tetanus measures should be taken, and to prevent secondary bacterial infections in case of open bleeding wounds, antibiotics can also be given. The next criteria is immunization. For immunization, we are using vaccines, and these vaccines, they are used for pre-exposure prophylaxis as well as post-exposure prophylaxis. So immunization can be done prior to the exposure, or it is very essential after exposure. So we are having two categories for immunization: pre-exposure prophylaxis and post-exposure prophylaxis, or we can say pre-exposure immunization and post-exposure immunization. Here we are talking about active immunization. What vaccines are available? We can use PCCV vaccine. PCCV stands for Purified Cell Culture Vaccine. And another vaccine is EEV, that is Embryonated Egg Based Vaccine. So this is Purified Cell Culture Vaccine or Embryonated Egg Based Vaccine. The vaccines which are available at international markets, these are cell culture vaccines and embryonated egg vaccines. They consist of a rabies virus, and this virus, it is propagated in the cell substrates. So here different types of cells are used. So it is propagated either through human diploid cells or fetal rhesus diploid cells, or sometimes Vero cells are used. Vero cells are kidney cells from African green monkey, or this is primary Syrian hamster kidney cells, or another most commonly used is primary chick embryo cells or embryonated duck eggs. So this is related with the manufacturing criteria. So we said the virus is propagated in cell substrates.
Important substrates includes
Human diploid cells and primary chick embryo cells are important, but you should know about rhesus diploid cells, Vero cells, embryonated duck eggs, which are used for propagation of the virus. Now there are various options which are available for immunization. We can use a human diploid cell vaccine, that is HDCV. HDCV stands for human diploid cell vaccine, or we can use chick embryo cell vaccines or Vero cells vaccine. Now, if we do comparison between these vaccines, that is HDCV, chick embryo and varicose vaccine. So as compared to HDCV, that is human diploid cells vaccine, chick embryo cells vaccine and varicose vaccine, they are safe, they are efficacious and they are less expensive. So safety margin is wide for chick embryo vaccine, for varicose vaccines, plus they are effective
in preventing development of rabies as well as they are
cost saving. So currently preferred is either we can use varicose vaccines or we can use chick embryo cells vaccine. Now the rabies vaccine, which is pre-qualified by World Health Organization,
do not contain preservatives like thiomersal, and though preservative thiomersal is not added to the vaccine, the shelf life of vaccine is quite long. The shelf life is about 3 years or even more than 3 years, provided that the vaccine is stored appropriately between 2 degrees Celsius to 8 degrees Celsius and it is protected from sunlight. So, the point to remember here is that the rabies vaccines, which are pre-qualified by World Health Organization, they are free from preservatives like thiomersal. And though they do not contain preservatives which are added to increase its shelf life, the shelf life of this vaccine is longer, which is more than 3 years.
This vaccine is available in powder form, so it is important to reconstitute the vaccine. So once the vaccine is reconstituted, after reconstitution also proper storage must be maintained, and after reconstitution we can use this vaccine within 6 hours to 8 hours. What is the dose recommended? So depending upon the vaccine which we are using, after reconstitution either we can take a dose 0.5 ml or 1 ml, or in case of international units you can say equal to or more than 2.5 international units. Now let us try to understand what are the WHO guidelines for post-exposure treatment. Again, this is practical and most important part. You must understand this aspect. Now what is done? The categories of contact with suspect rabid animals and post-exposure prophylaxis measures, it includes, so whatever cases are there, they are categorized into different categories. So here you must be able to categorize the patient, and once you can categorize the patient, you can decide what measure, what post-exposure prophylaxis measure we are supposed to take. Total 3 categories are there: category 1, category 2 and category 3. Now let us try to understand category 1. Category 1, so there is touching to the animal, or there is feeding to the animal, or sometimes there might be licking by animal on intact skin. So most important here is there is no bite, there is no scratching, possibility of licking is there, and skin is intact, or person may have exposed either by touching or while feeding the animals. This is considered as no exposure, and for this the guideline given by World Health Organization is only local care or wound care, so washing of the exposed skin surfaces as per the guidelines what we had discussed. So appropriate washing is only recommended thing in such cases, and it do not require post exposure prophylactic measures. So category 1, it is simple washing of wound. Category 2, so there is possibility of minor scratches, or what you can see in patient is minor scratches or abrasions, or there is nibbling of uncovered skin. But you should have to observe very carefully the wound for the presence of bleeding. In category 2, there is no bleeding, though you can see some minor abrasions or scratches, but these abrasions and scratches are without bleeding. This is considered as exposure. Category 3, it includes bites. Either there can be single bite or there can be multiple bites, or there can be single or multiple scratches. There is possibility of contamination of mucous membrane, or you can observe broken skin. So what we are saying, the skin is broken and mucous membrane they have exposed to the saliva of rabid animals. This is considered as severe exposure. So here sometimes you can find big bites, severe bites, bleeding is present. All such types of wounds are considered as category 3. So here for category 2, 3, wound washing is essential. Immediate vaccination is essential, plus administration of rabies immunoglobulin is essential. So local wound care followed by vaccination along with passive immunization by using rabies immunoglobulin.
In this slide, you can see the tabular format related to 3 categories of rabies patients: category 1, category 2 and category 3. How you can identify the patients of category 1? You should have to pay attention to the site where there is licking by the dog, and if you find the skin is intact, you can categorize it as category 1. And what will be your suggestion for these patients? No post-exposure prophylaxis is required for these patients. And what you can say about an exposure? So if you find there is intact skin, you can consider it as no exposure. If you find minor scratches or minor abrasions, now you will include these patients as category 2 patients. And what will be your advice for these patients, that is category 2 patients? You will advise immediate immunization and local treatment of the wound. Regarding exposure, what you can say? Yes, there is exposure to rabid animal. Don't forget the most important point for category 2 patients, that is, though you can see minor scratches or minor abrasions, there is no bleeding. If you see a patient with multiple scratches or multiple bites, or even single scratch or single bite where there is presence of bleeding, or even if your patient gives you history of licking by dog But this licking, it occurred on the broken skin. Or in other countries like USA, if there is exposure to bats, or there is possibility of contamination of mucous membrane by saliva of these animals. Now what you will do, you will categorize it as category 3 patient. What should be your advice for category 3 patients? 2 points are same, that is local treatment of the wound and rabies vaccination. But in addition, for these patients, that is category 3 patient, you will advise administration of rabies immunoglobulin. So try to understand here how the post-exposure prophylaxis differs for category 2 and category 3 patients. Common thing is local treatment of the wound. Another common thing is active immunization or immediate immunization with rabies vaccine. But the differentiating feature is use of rabies immunoglobulin for category 3 patients and not for category 2 patients.
All these patients, that is belonging to category 2 and category 3, their exposure, it is assessed by carrying a risk of developing rabies, require post-exposure prophylaxis. So there is increased risk if the biting mammal is a known rabies reservoir, or if such kind of exposure have occurred in geographical areas where rabies is still present, or if animal looks like sick or animal shows abnormal behavior. We are talking about category 2, category 3 patients which are exposed to the rabid animals, and there is increased risk of developing rabies if biting animal is a known reservoir of rabies, if such kind of exposure has occurred in geographical areas where rabies is still present, or if animal shows abnormal behavior, if the wound or mucous membrane is contaminated by saliva of rabid animal, or if animal is not vaccinated against rabies, or after bite if animal cannot be traced or animal cannot be identified. All these conditions increases risk of developing rabies. Now, while deciding post-exposure prophylaxis, whether the vaccination strategy or vaccination status of animal is taken into consideration or not. So, ideally speaking, the vaccination status of a suspect animal should not be the deciding factor when considering initiation of post-exposure prophylaxis. So, if we don't know vaccination status of the animal, or even if the animal is vaccinated, still it is essential to begin with post-exposure prophylaxis. Now, can we discontinue post-exposure prophylaxis? Once we start it, can we discontinue it? Yes, post-exposure prophylaxis can be discontinued if the suspected animal, it is proved to be free from rabies by appropriate laboratory examination. So after bite, if we do laboratory diagnosis in case of animals, and the gold standard test for lab diagnosis is a direct fluorescent antibody test. So if this laboratory examination gives us the report that animal is free from rabies, the suspected animal is free from rabies, we can discontinue post-exposure prophylaxis. Or another criteria that we can use for discontinuation of post-exposure prophylaxis, it includes in case of domestic dogs or in case of domestic cats, if the animal remains healthy for about 10 days after carefully observing these animals, starting from the day 1 of bite or day 0 of bite. So what we are supposed to do here, it is very essential to observe the animal. If it is pet animal, if it is domestic dog, or if it is domestic cat which has taken bite of the person. So after bite, from that day, for next 10 days, these animals should be observed thoroughly and carefully. And if they do not develop any signs or symptoms of rabies or they remain healthy, still in this condition we can discontinue post-exposure prophylaxis. Now what is recommendation for post-exposure prophylaxis? So if this question is asked for 2 marks, that is post-exposure prophylaxis in case of rabies. So 3 categories you are supposed to know, category 1, 2 and 3. And category 1 we do not consider it as exposure, and post-exposure prophylaxis is not recommended for category 1 patients. It is recommended for category 2 and category 3 exposures. Now depending upon the vaccine, the dose of vaccine that we are selecting for rabies immunization, it will vary from 0.5 ml to 1 ml. If you are using HDCV, that is human diploid cell vaccine, 1 ml dose can be taken, or if we are using PCEC vaccine, the dose is 1 ml. PCEC is purified chick embryo vaccine, chick embryo cell vaccine. So depending upon the vaccine, your dose will change. Now where to give this vaccine? It is given in deltoid muscle, or if the case of category 2 or category 3 exposure is below 2 years of age, or simply you can say children below 2 years of age, the vaccine should be given in these children at anterolateral aspect of thigh. So depending upon the age of the person, you should have to select the site for administration of HDCV or PCEC or other anti-rabies vaccines. So we said deltoid muscle, or in case of children below 2 years of age, the site is anterolateral aspect of thigh. There are 2 regimens that are recommended. So these regimens are called as Essen regimen and Zagreb regimen. We are talking, I repeat, we are talking about post-exposure prophylaxis. It is recommended only for category 2 and category 3 patients. Depending upon the vaccine we are using, the dose can be 0.5 or 1 ml. you can administer it in a deltoid, but if the case is below 2 years of age, vaccine should be given on anterolateral aspect of thigh, and two regimens are recommended. It is SN regimen and Zagreb regimen. SN regimen is 5-dose regimen and Zagreb regimen is 4-dose regimen. We said SN regimen and Zagreb regimen. Number of doses varies. For SN regimen, it is 5-dose regimen and Zagreb is 4-dose regimen.
In this slide, you can see the sites for administration of rabies vaccine. Please note deltoid and anterolateral aspect of thigh. But you will use anterolateral aspect of thigh for infants and for children between 1 to 2 years of age. What you should see in this image, please note the green color and red color areas. Green color areas, it denotes deltoid, and in case of children, the green color area, it denotes anterolateral aspect of thigh. So you will use these sites for administration of rabies vaccine, which is given either by intramuscular route or by intradermal route. But please note the red color areas, that is gluteus, where rabies vaccine is not given. Also, you can note that in case of children, the green areas are shown in relation to deltoid also and in relation to anterolateral aspect of thigh also. Why this is so? Because anterolateral aspect of thigh you will prefer only up to 2 years of age, and after that the site of administration for rabies vaccine will be deltoid muscle. Now you know the sites for administration of the rabies vaccine, and you also know the routes. The vaccine can be given intramuscularly or intradermally. Accordingly, it is called as intramuscular regimen and intradermal regimen. But in this session, we are going to discuss only intramuscular regimen. Intradermal regimen we are going to discuss in next session. So let us try to understand intramuscular regimen. Remember, these regimens we are talking in relation to post-exposure prophylaxis.
Now, what is intramuscular regimen for rabies? As far as mode of administration of vaccines is concerned, the vaccines used for rabies immunization, they can be given intramuscularly or intradermally. Here we are talking about intramuscular regimen for rabies. For post-exposure prophylaxis, we said SN regimen is 5-dose regimen, and in this regimen vaccine is given by intramuscular route. So vaccine is given in the form of injection. Injection is given intramuscularly. Total how many doses we are supposed to give? These are 5 doses. So 1 dose of vaccine, it is administered on day 0, day 3, day 7, day 14 and day 28. I repeat, it is 0, 3, 7, 14 and 28. Site, as we discussed earlier, it is given intramuscularly. in deltoid muscle above 2 years of age, and below 2 years of age it is given in anterolateral aspect of thigh. So how many vials we are using here? Total 5 vials, because we are giving 5 doses. And how many visits patient has to give? So total visits are 5. So it is 5 vials and 5 visits. So I repeat, intramuscular regimen for post-exposure prophylaxis. It is SN regimen where 5 doses are given intramuscularly either in deltoid or on anterolateral aspect of thigh, and the days are 0, 3, 7, 14 and 28.
Please note, in this image you can see deltoid region, but the mode of administration of vaccine is intramuscular. So please note intramuscular administration of rabies vaccine. In this slide you can see the blue colored arrows. What these blue colored arrows indicates? They indicates the days when the rabies vaccine should be administered to the patient for post-exposure prophylaxis by intramuscular route. At the end you can see rabies immunoglobulin, but now you know it is indicated only for category 2 and category 3 patients along with vaccination. We are talking about which regimen? Yes, you are right. It is SN regimen.
Second regimen, where again vaccine we are giving by intramuscular route, concerned with post-exposure prophylaxis. This is Zagreb regimen. So this is 4 dose regimen. Now how 4 doses are there? So it is 2 doses of vaccine are given on day 0. So simultaneously we should have to give 2 doses on day 0. So 1 dose is given in right arm and 1 dose is given on left arm. So in both deltoids you should have to give 2 doses. So this is 2, and additional 1 dose it is given on day 7 and day 21. So this is day 0 2 doses, day 7 1 dose, and day 21 next dose. So total 4 doses. So how many vials we are using here? 4 vials. But number of visits of patient won't be 4 here, because 2 doses we are giving on day 0. So this is 4 vials and 3 visits.
In this slide you can see the Zagreb regimen. Please ignore the spelling mistake. Now here you can see only 3 blue colored lines indicating the days when patient should take vaccine. But note, on day 0 you are going to give 2 doses of rabies vaccine and then next 2 doses. So total 3 visits.
Alternative regimen which is suggested for healthy individuals who are fully immunocompetent and exposed person, what they should receive is local care of wound plus rabies immunoglobulin plus rabies vaccines. So these 3 are most important criteria related with the management: local care of wound or wound washing plus rabies immunoglobulin plus rabies vaccine. And if the individuals are healthy, they are fully immunocompetent, post-exposure intramuscular regimen, 4 dose regimen can be given on day 0, day 3, day 7 and day 14.
So here we are talking about an alternative regimen for healthy and immunocompetent individuals. We are supposed to give local wound care. We are supposed to give rabies vaccination. Plus, we are supposed to give rabies immunoglobulin. And how many doses you will advise? Total 4 doses. And you will call your patient for an alternative regimen. On day 0, you will give first dose. You will call back your patient on day 3, then on day 7, and then on day 14. Before discussing intradermal regimen, let's have recap so that intradermal regimen and rabies in dogs we will discuss in next session. So what we discussed today, we tried to understand how to prevent rabies. There are 3 important considerations, out of which today we discussed only post-exposure prophylaxis. Still some part of it is remaining. In post-exposure prophylaxis, it is important to understand local treatment of the wound, or in general language we can call it as wound washing. So, local treatment, what it includes? It's cleansing. So the wound must be immediately flushed and washed under the running water. And what is the duration? It should be washed under running tap water for about 15 minutes. Preferably, if soap is available, it should be used. But even if it is not available, plain water and plenty of water can be used for washing the wound. This cleansing should get followed by chemical treatment where we use virucidal agent. And don't forget the most important guideline regarding suturing of bite wounds. These bite wounds, if they require suturing, they should not be sutured immediately. And in addition to local treatment, the most important criteria is of immunization. For immunization, most commonly used vaccines, it includes cell culture vaccine, or it is also known as purified cell cultured vaccine, and embryonated egg-based vaccines. For administration of vaccine, it is very essential to understand whether each and every case of dog bite or rabbit animal bite requires immunization or vaccination or not. So for this, to be specifically for post-exposure prophylaxis, what we do, we categorize the patient into 3 categories. Category 1, 2 and 3. Category 1, intact skin. Category 2, minor scratches or minor abrasions without bleeding. And category 3, where you can get multiple or single bite or scratches. In addition, contact with bats or leaks on broken skin or contamination of mucous membrane with the saliva of rabid animals. Now what we do for category 1? Category 1 patients, they do not require vaccination. Vaccination or immunization, it is required for category 2 and category 3 patients. In addition to immunization, category 3 patients, they require use of rabies immunoglobulin. So here we recommend active as well as passive immunization. Now for immunization, there are 2 regimens, intramuscular and intradermal. Today we discussed only intramuscular regimen, where there are two important regimens, SN regimen, 5 vials and 5 visits, whereas Zagreb regimen, where there are 4 vials but only 3 visits of the patient. So, this is about today's lecture. In tomorrow's session, we will discuss the remaining part of the rabies. Thank you.